Ladies and gentlemen, today we are confronted with a paradox of our time. Never in history have human beings had so much access to knowledge, yet never has wisdom been so scarce. We are drowning in information but starving for truth. The modern world, driven by noise, spectacle, and the endless hunger for validation, has begun to glorify stupidity, while the quiet strength of wisdom fades into the shadows. The human mind is naturally drawn to reward, and in the modern world, the strongest form of reward is attention. At its core, psychology teaches us that behavior is shaped by reinforcement, and today's reinforcement does not come from effort, discipline, or wisdom. It comes from likes, views, and viral moments. Social media platforms and digital spaces are designed to hook into the brain's reward system, releasing dopamine every time a notification lights up the screen. The more outrageous, the more shocking, the more foolish the act, the higher the likelihood of gaining that instant hit of validation. Over time, this cycle conditions people to chase attention rather than truth, spectacle rather than substance. And when attention becomes the new currency, it is not the wise who win, but the loud, the careless, and the extreme. Wisdom by nature is quiet. It does not seek to entertain but to enlighten. It requires patience to explain and time to absorb. In a fast-paced world, where minds are overstimulated and attention spans are shrinking, wisdom cannot compete with the thrill of instant gratification. A thoughtful essay cannot rival a 30-second meme. A carefully reasoned argument cannot compete with a viral prank. Psychologically, we are training ourselves to devalue wisdom because it does not satisfy the immediate hunger for excitement. Instead, stupidity becomes a performance, and performance becomes the measure of value. We see this everywhere. In the influencers who rise to fame, not for their insight but for their antics, in the news that favors shock over accuracy, in the conversations that reward exaggeration rather than nuance. People are not applauding truth, they are applauding spectacle, and this in turn shapes identity. Young people growing up in this digital age learn quickly that the path to recognition is not through thoughtful contributions, but through attention-seeking behavior. They are not motivated to read deeply, question critically, or reflect carefully, because those qualities do not bring the same dopamine rush. The mind, seeking the quickest path to reward, abandons wisdom for noise. And so we see the rise of a culture where stupidity is not merely tolerated, but glorified, where the shallow is celebrated, and where the meaningful is forgotten. It is not because people do not know wisdom has value, but because the structures of our society reward the opposite. This is how the psychological reinforcement of attention slowly erodes the place of wisdom in the modern world. The illusion of knowledge is one of the most dangerous psychological traps of the modern age, and it lies at the heart of why stupidity is celebrated while wisdom fades. Psychologists have long studied the Dunning-Kruger effect, which shows that people with limited knowledge often overestimate their competence, while those with true expertise are more aware of their limits and therefore more cautious in their claims. In the digital era, this effect is magnified to a disturbing degree. A person scrolling through a feed, reading a single headline, or watching a short video clip can walk away feeling as though they understand a complex issue fully. The speed and ease with which information is presented tricks the brain into a false sense of mastery. The less effort required, the more confident people become in their understanding. This illusion is not harmless. It fuels arrogance without foundation. Someone who has only skimmed the surface of an issue will speak with bold certainty, while the wise, who recognize nuance and complexity, will hesitate or qualify their words. In the noisy competition of modern discourse, confidence wins over accuracy. Bold claims, even if wrong, spread faster and gain more attention than careful explanation. Psychologically, we are conditioned to trust confidence as a signal of competence, and so the illusion of knowledge is rewarded, while genuine wisdom, which often carries humility and doubt, is dismissed as weakness. This creates a vicious cycle. The less people truly know, the louder they shout, and the louder they shout, the more they are heard. Meanwhile, those with deeper understanding remain overshadowed, their wisdom lost in the flood of shallow certainty. The tragedy is that true knowledge requires time, patience, and humility. It requires acknowledging how much one does not know, and being willing to learn. But in a culture that glorifies quick answers and instant opinions, such humility does not shine. Instead, arrogance wrapped in ignorance becomes the standard, and the crowd applauds those who appear most sure of themselves, regardless of the accuracy of their words. The illusion of knowledge is therefore not just a personal flaw, it is a societal one. It feeds into a culture that mistakes noise for truth, certainty for intelligence, and ignorance for insight. In this way, the very fabric of wisdom is unraveled, not by lack of access to knowledge, but by the dangerous confidence born from superficial understanding. Human beings are social creatures, and one of the strongest psychological forces shaping our behavior is the fear of exclusion. From childhood, we learn that belonging to a group is a matter of survival, comfort, and safety. The mind is wired to seek acceptance and avoid rejection, even at the cost of truth. This instinct, known as the herd mentality, becomes magnified in the modern digital age, where the group is not just a handful of friends or neighbors, but millions of voices amplified through social media. When the crowd laughs at something shallow or foolish, we feel pressure to laugh as well, not necessarily because we agree, but because we fear being left out. When the crowd dismisses or mocks wisdom, few are brave enough to stand against the tide. This creates a culture where the collective decides what is valuable, and increasingly, it is stupidity rather than wisdom that captures the crowd's attention. Psychology tells us that social identity is one of the strongest motivators of human behavior. We do not simply want to hold an opinion. We want our opinions to match the groups we identify with. If the group celebrates noise, we celebrate noise. If the group ridicules thoughtfulness, we hide our thoughtfulness. This dynamic rewards conformity over originality and volume over truth. In the age of constant connectivity, the herd effect is not only more powerful but also more dangerous. A single foolish trend can spread across the globe in minutes, with millions imitating behavior that has no value or even causes harm. Meanwhile, acts of wisdom, quiet, reflective, and meaningful, rarely spread with the same velocity. They require effort to understand, and effort is something the collective mind resists. The fear of exclusion makes people complicit in this glorification of stupidity. Deep down, many individuals may recognize that what is celebrated is empty, but the need to belong outweighs the need to be right. Psychologically, ridicule is more painful than ignorance, so people silence their doubts to remain part of the group. Over time, this silence becomes agreement, and agreement becomes reinforcement. The group normalizes stupidity, and the individual learns to accept it as truth. What is worse, this cycle conditions the next generation to see conformity as virtue and independent thought as rebellion. The herd mentality also strips away accountability. When foolishness is shared and celebrated by millions, no one feels responsible for its spread. Each individual believes they are just going along, but together, the collective amplifies the problem. Wisdom, which thrives on individual responsibility, critical reflection, and the courage to stand apart, becomes nearly impossible in such an environment. People do not ask, "Is this true?" but rather, "Will others accept me if I say it?" That subtle shift marks the psychological death of wisdom. Thus, the glorification of stupidity is not simply about ignorance. It is about the deep psychological need for belonging. As long as humans value acceptance over truth, the herd will continue to celebrate noise, and wisdom will remain drowned out, not because it has lost its value, but because too few are willing to risk standing alone to defend it. Wisdom is never shallow. It requires effort, patience, and depth of thought. It demands that we pause, reflect, and sometimes wrestle with discomfort before arriving at understanding. Yet the modern world, shaped by convenience and speed, has conditioned our minds to resist that very process. Psychologically, human beings are naturally inclined to conserve energy. Our brains look for shortcuts, quick solutions, easy explanations, immediate relief. In earlier times, this survival instinct served us well. But in today's digital age, where information is endless and attention is constantly fragmented, this tendency has created a preference for simplicity over substance. Stupidity in this context feels easy. It entertains without asking questions, distracts without requiring thought, and soothes without challenging us. Wisdom, on the other hand, feels heavy. It demands focus, critical thinking, and sometimes the discomfort of confronting truths we would rather ignore. Faced with this choice, most people unconsciously choose ease. The abandonment of depth can be seen in every corner of modern culture. Reading has been replaced by skimming, listening by scrolling, and reflection by reaction. A carefully researched book is less appealing than a 5-minute video summary. A complex debate is less engaging than a snappy meme. Our collective psychology has been reshaped by the rhythms of technology, constant notifications, endless scrolling, and fleeting images. train the mind to expect instant stimulation. When wisdom arrives slowly and quietly, it no longer matches the speed of the world around us. The mind, addicted to fast gratification, pushes it aside in favor of the next quick fix. This preference for shallowness is not harmless. It reshapes identity and values. Young people, growing up in an environment where trends change by the hour, learn that what matters most is not the depth of what they know, but the speed with which they can adapt to what is popular. Critical thinking becomes less valuable than quick wit, reflection less valuable than instant reaction. The result is a society where wisdom is perceived as outdated, even boring, while foolishness, dressed in novelty and entertainment, captures attention. The psychological cost of this shift is profound. Without depth, individuals lose resilience. Wisdom prepares the mind to endure complexity, to accept uncertainty, and to face life's challenges with clarity. Stupidity, by contrast, thrives on distraction and avoidance. It offers temporary relief, but leaves the mind fragile, unprepared for the realities of life. This is why so many feel overwhelmed, anxious, and lost, despite being surrounded by limitless information. The absence of depth leaves a void that entertainment alone cannot fill. The tragedy of the modern world is not that wisdom has disappeared, but that we no longer train ourselves to recognize and value it. Depth still exists in books, in conversations, in the quiet moments of thought, but it requires discipline to pursue. Until society learns to resist the lure of ease, stupidity will continue to dominate, not because it is stronger than wisdom, but because it is lighter, faster, and easier to consume. In a culture addicted to speed, wisdom feels like an inconvenience, and that perception is what slowly kills it. Ladies and gentlemen, the death of wisdom is not inevitable. It is a choice we are making, moment by moment, click by click. If we dare to resist the dopamine traps, if we dare to value truth over applause, if we dare to think when others merely consume, then wisdom can rise again. The world does not need more noise, it needs more clarity. It does not need more confidence, it needs more humility. And above all, it does not need the glorification of stupidity. It needs the resurrection of wisdom.